What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, we'll be bringing back tier lists, and they won't flood the channel, but I would like to do them quarterly to serve as an extension to the new set videos and showing where I believe they stack. Anyways, before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated as they go a long way in supporting the channel and show me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also mean a lot as they notify you when I upload on the channel. The first deck you'll see here is Tri-Brigade, and because I want to flesh out this list as much as possible, I do have them at tier 3. The Punk, Sprite, and Lyraless variants all have their strengths, but ultimately they do require you to commit more space to engines and less space for going second. The engines and variants are all solid, enough to keep the deck afloat, and better than Rogue in my opinion, which is why you see this tier 3 slot. And while there is an argument for putting the Tri-Brigade Sprite variant at tier 2, which you can, I just didn't feel it was as good as the ones that I have above it. Infernoids are my first hope for support deck, and it's not because the deck can't function, but drawing Infernoid-filled hands in 2023 is more costly than ever. Board breakers are more prevalent, and the graveyard is becoming less important. The next deck is Ninjas, and I also want to put this as tier 3, because I believe it has a good cash matchup, being able to max out on your important extra deck fusions, and having a ton of Book of Moon at its disposal, and having a good amount of space for staples, making it just competent to stay out of the Rogue tier. Draco Slayers had a good couple of weeks, and then the Ishizu cards came out. Followed by that, we got Kashtira and the rest of the Photon Hypernova cards. D-Barrier is rough, and Labyrinth admittedly can be a terrible matchup. I'll put them as Rogue because I still believe the deck is good, but a more realistic tier is probably not right now. Exosisters are another deck currently facing a rough patch, with less importance of the graveyard, cash banishing cards from your deck or extra deck, and Fenrir being an easy out to the Exceeds, you're kind of left to bank on your traps. I feel due to their restrictive card design, I have to place them in not right now. Phantom Knights have lost a ton of pieces, but gained others. The tier engine milling cards in Mud Dragon and Sprint replacing what Verte used to do is convenient, but definitely not enough to make it good. Alongside potential adventure cards, you're playing the Phantom Knight traps, which can be rough when going second. I still think board breakers are decent enough to put them in the Rogue tier, though the top 3 decks can give them problems. Plunder is another adventure deck that recently got support with Jord, the level 8 synchro, that lets you play around cards like Evenly and can even lock certain decks out of playing by combining that with Rivalry. Playing the adventure engine makes me hesitant to put it too up high though, but I still think it's deserving of at least Rogue. These next few decks I really don't want to go too much into detail with, but I do want to talk about their restrictive and outdated card design. The playstyles make it hard not to put them at the bottom of the list, and decks becoming more universal as more sets come. I'll have to put these 5 at hope for support, though it is interesting to note that with the Dante Quarter Century rarity revealed, we could put the Burning Abyss at future support, but because I'm not going to assume, we're just going to put this back here with the rest of the hoping for support. I think Altergeist is good enough to be in the bottom of Rogue, as with 3 skill drain, the deck is definitely a lot stronger than it was in its prime. Rivalry has also gotten better as time has gone on, and it wants to play cards like Evenly while also having space for the extra board breakers or hand traps. So while I know a lot of people say the deck is bad, I just don't want to undermine it either. I think Blackwings deserve love, even if it's not for this format. 1-card Phantom Glimmer combos leading into full Armor Master and a level 8 Dark Synchro has to be good at least sometimes, right? Simoon being another low resource combo play and having cards like Prosperity or Allure to dig you into your going second cards or your combo pieces make the Rogue tier feel like a solid option for this deck. DDD got an indirect buff through the ban list as tier Ishizu is no longer in the format, but the Cash and Labyrinth matchups can be just as rough. A good deck behind a good pilot, I'd still place it in Rogue though. Salad has unfortunately been outclassed by basically every other Cybers deck, and Gazelle is still at 1. I'll put it at not right now until Gazelle comes back to 3. Witchcrafters recently got a new fusion and spell card. Good support, but it doesn't fix the consistency problems of the deck and the speed of the modern. I'll put this as hope for support because I believe that's where it's at even with the Dogmatica engine, giving it a slight buff that some of these other decks may not have. Cyber Dragons or Cyber Sprite, Verte was a big hit, and some of the 2015 post support is already showing its age. Clockwork Knight is kind of cool, but the deck needs more. I feel that we have to hope for support, especially after the elf ban. Generators do have a consistency issue, but it's powerful when it gets going. Vera also gives the deck another 3 of consistency card, lowering the amount of bricks. A solid enough deck to go into the rogue category, especially with the new rank 9. That Ignister can be decent in certain formats that struggle with towers like monsters. Its ability to dodge D barriers by just link climbing also helps, but it's quite easy to side for. With a Rise Heart Pass bringing more kaijus into the format, it makes things a little more complicated. Good enough to be rogue, but I probably wouldn't place it higher right now. The next few decks are Sprite variants. The tier is and isn't, but I'll talk about that one after I finish with the main 3 versions. And I think that the Evil Twin and Gishki versions can put out massive boards and are overall solidly consistent. The Elf ban hurts, but they can still end on at least 1 negation with a Sprite Spell or Trap with the rest of their board consistently. Lava Golem and Kashtira can be kind of rough. You also have to sacrifice going second slots to play the variants, but they're still good enough to be at the tier 2 slots in my opinion. The tier variant does bank on the nimble cards a bit more, where you're playing less Sprite cards and the cash matchup is arguably worse, so I would probably knock that down to tier 3, which is also why the Tri-Brigade Sprite I have a bit under the other 2 variants. Same thing with tier Runic, it just doesn't have as many cards legal as it used to have. And about that, I think a Shizu tier may be a not right now for this format, but I don't think it's necessarily dead with all the generic good cards in the game. I'll still put it at Rogue for benefit of the doubt, as players are still experimenting with the deck. Infernobles are here because they just got support announced that fundamentally changes how some of the things you'll be doing with the deck will go. This will obviously go in future support as something to be mindful of. Despia is the first of our big 3, and I'll be putting this at 1.5 as a tier 1 listing will be reserved for the best deck, and Despia has gotten loads of support and will continue to when we get the Synchro, Dispatter, amongst others that will improve the versatility of this deck. Losing to Ash is still a terrible feeling though, and all the Garnets you're playing to lose to a single Ash is why it's at 1.5. I don't care what anyone says about Dogmatic or Ritual. I think that they're tier 3. I think that they're even better than Ninjas. I've worked a lot on the deck, improving its going second a lot more, making it tricky to play against for anything that isn't Cash or Labyrinth. Special summoning Ecclesia and Search 2 off of Dogmatica tricks is absolutely insane for going second engine pieces. Ripping cards from your opponent's extra deck can also be an FTK. Now we have our 3 hero variants. Neo's drawing into going second card with End Shuffle, Fusion Sub, Liquid Soldier, and Crosskeeper is nice. Even nicer when you play cards that can go first and second, as they actually give the deck a decent enough going first end board if you draw into them. They do have a new fusion coming, so I will put them at future support, though they'll likely need more than that. I think Omni Heroes and Destiny Heroes are a lot stronger than people think right now. As long as you're not playing through D-Barrier or Skill Drain, going second you can basically blow through any board any of the top meta decks make. Ultimately, they can lose quite hard to themselves. Lava Golem and Nibiru are also enough to leave the deck reeling, but it's hard to argue they feel tier 2 most of the time. D-Force with Plasma is also insane against a lot of matchups. The addition of Wake Up also makes them even stronger, as getting to your Dark Law or even something like Blackluster Soldier, the Sacred Soldier, to be a disruption, which you can put back your Sunriser or your Mali or whatever darker light that's banished to get a banish on your opponent's turn. So it does come at the cost of playing a card that isn't a hero. Sword Soul, for the same reason as Tri-Brigade, I have at tier 3. They do enough to be decent, but it's not anything too crazy. The amount of board breakers in the format also doesn't help. I feel like Punk, Runic, and Adventure engines are strong enough on their own to be tier 2 or 3 looking at them as engines, but as decks, would probably put them at the rogue tier, not right now. As they're mostly used as engines, I will put them at the tier 3 slot. I'll do tier 2 for Runic because I do believe it's stronger, but this is going to be judging them off as engines, not as standalone decks. These next 4 decks are for the Yugi Boomers. While it's cute that they have their own decks, they also have a multitude of problems. Dark Magician feels outdated, Blue Eyes relies on Dragon Link, Bisteel, and Punk cards who cling to any type of playability. Gate Guardian just got its first batch of support and feels undersupported, and Umi, while a cute stun deck, others just feel like they far outclass it. I'll probably put all of these at the hope for support because they deserve good support and they need it. Bring into an entertaining form of rogue, not many know what it does. They remember once Sargus searches Tally, and Tally brings out 3 monsters on board. Merrymaker and Sargus being used as a rank 4 engine to bridge Therions into other decks is also funny, and just for that it deserves the rogue slot in my opinion. I think sharks are interesting because of Crooked Cook, but kaijus are creeping back into the format, and the deck can still make multiple toads, which is also kind of cute. So it still leaves little to no follow-up. The deck feels outdated a bit, but just decent enough to be on the bottom of the rogue tier. Marincess is a deck that's had a little bit of a comeback. Its versatility and options make it good enough to be tier 3. I wouldn't put them higher with the speed of some of these newer decks. Not losing to D-Barrier is also nice. Having space for going second cards is too. Scareclaw is an interesting deck to some, boring to others. Known for Tryhard Pass, the deck has access to Fenrir, the adventure engine, allowing you to innovate a bit more. Scareclaw Kashtira being a level 7 Scareclaw, either go into Lightheart or Dracosac for the Cherubini into Water Enchantress. Is it just enough for me to put it into the rogue tier? Versions of Kashtira with Unicorn, so being able to lock your opponent out of their zones, making you more vulnerable to certain board breakers, even hand traps. Now, I think Sky Striker Runic is interesting, and I would like to put them at tier 3. And I do this because ability to fill spells in the graveyard and amass card advantage, whether it be searching, drawing, or removing cards from their board with Runic or Sky Striker spells, is just enough for me to leave them out of the rogue tier. Spellbook's got Judgment back, but Judgment means playing bricks. Is Judgment bad? Maybe. Crazy, right? This is a deck that put into rogue until proven it should be below that, as I have seen some results with the deck. Another Cybers deck, we have Mathmech, the most powerful of the bunch in my opinion, and home to Circular. I think tier 3 is a solid landing spot for this deck. Some restrictions do hinder it. Superfactorial can be easily disrupted, which holds the deck back from being any higher for me. Final Cybers deck hidden as Medolce all this time. Generic Cybers, and this is a deck that's here for future support. Cyberstorm Access coming in a little under 2 months is potentially another deck to watch out for. These next 3 decks are all variants of Vernasylph, which have the capability to bring out Earth Statue, something that could be important post a Fenrir hit. I'll put them in not right now, but for now they should be something that you don't ignore, especially with the Earth Machine having that cute FTK that we saw recently. Naturia is another potential Vernasylph variant dependent on ban list amongst other things, but right now I think it's a good tier 2 deck as Runic Naturia. Amelia and Mole Cricket have proven to be great cards for the Naturia archetype, leaving almost the rest behind to play with engines that do more. Sunflower just came for the ride. Pixie Eyes will be getting Photon Jumper, and even then it will probably need a bit more. The new support drastically changed the archetype, but what comes first? Change the outview for this archetype, power creep, or more galaxy cards. Have to put this at not right now. Grund are one of the biggest winners of Maze with their new Searcher and Synchro. The deck can be built more modernized while pumping out huge boards. Crossout is now a valid option for Nibiru if you can't get into Herald before the 5th summon. And I'll put this at Rogue for now, but Assault Synchron will further change this deck come June. Megatron and Flu are 2 of the most degenerate Titans to ever fall. They still used to be Titans. Flu can play a bunch of good cards and just end on Apex Avion to rise your opponent on their turn. Megatron in the meanwhile can still lock you out of playing at all. Both suffer from consistency issues. They're still good enough to be at Rogue to Tier 3. In my opinion, I will put them at Tier 3 just because I do believe that they're better than a lot of these Rogue decks. Second juggernaut of the format is here with Labyrinth, providing a terrible matchup for a lot of our current decks, having an engine that is supported by a massive floodgates. These targeting protection and high attack also go a long way in ending games quicker than they should. The ones are also capable of spamming out random OTKs. Two represents Orcus and Mech Knights, and both these decks are sadly on life support right now. They're hoping for support, and Harp wouldn't even change much. Conco had a quick and solid run, and will maybe have another one day as an engine, as it's still pretty solid. As a deck, I'll probably put it at Rogue with the Libromancer stuff. The Libro Omni Negation and the Snatch Steal can be annoying for some decks to get over. Plants at this point in time just feel like a worse Despia deck with its own gimmick. A strong gimmick when you make it work, but I just don't think that this format is for it right now. Nibiru and the rest of the board breakers, along with Despia just being better at basically everything, considerably lower its viability to make me believe it's just at not right now. Link, Chaos, Thunder, etc. just aren't good enough without the Chaos Ruler and Bestials not being as good. While they're good enough to be Rogue, I'll put them as not right now due to the decks and matchups this format. Knights are another deck getting support in Cyberstorm Access that will modernize their playstyle, something Tellarknight players can look forward to, but until then, it's future support. And plants are in interesting situations. Loki is becoming better off as an engine, where Rika is just outshining other plant decks. I think Rika is solid tier 3, but I have to put plants at the lower end of Rogue. Rika just puts out bigger boards and can play through more. EV Archetype is another deck I'll be putting on future support. The new cards have a draw 6 combo that is doing well in the OCG, though in all fairness, we have to see how it translates to the TCG. For tier 2 deck, Trap Tricks, the worst of the two new trap decks. Sarah is still as crazy as ever. The ability to make Rafflesia enough to counter Nibiru through better cards in its deck like Holtea, give it enough of a push to move it to the top of tier 2. We have Dark World, and Dark World is another deck that got big buffs in its structure deck. A deck that we thought was dead, and after its Curious and Chaos Ruler hits, it's starting to seem less like it. Uninterrupted, the deck either FTKs you or beats itself. Second, you can break some of the tougher boards in the game. I feel it's good enough to almost be tier 5, but if it weren't its own kryptonite, I wouldn't have it as tier 2. Watch my insect video, you'll know this deck is in dire need for support, so I have to put this in the hope for support category. Going first is abysmal, and its going second is just enough to be decent. Tira is the only tier 1 deck this format for me, as it's the best deck. Punishing opponents' resources, locking their zones, 1-card combos, flexible end boards that can play around whatever you need to, and space to play going second cards is what you'd expect out of a top deck in this game. Next two decks are like different generations of Pendulum decks, with Valance and Endymion. Endymion Runic is a fun version to play, and it has a lot of options, but the deck suffers from old card design. The 1-card combos Valance have are essentially 2-card combos for Endymion. Dyna can still carry both decks, feel neither are below or above the Rogue tier. Buddy Rescue Ace. Cute potential engine, but as a deck it just feels underwhelming. Dedicated players could see results, but I still feel this is better left off at the bottom end of Rogue to not right now. Elvish is the third best trap deck, and worthy of being at tier 3 or maybe Rogue. I really wouldn't put over any of the top tier 3 decks, just enough to compete though. Beast recently got a structure deck, but it almost feels like they need one more. While not encouraging to hear, we have seen results with the deck to a smaller scale, so I think Rogue is fair. Next 4 decks are really like the ghost of yesteryear. Ranging from 2016 to 2019, these decks arrived and saw immediate play. With Shadal's, it happened twice in 2014 and 2019 after its structure deck. TC is probably the only one that is justifiable to put at Rogue to tier 3. Alistair DPE Dogmatica is extremely susceptible to cash. As are Dinos, Shadal's just need an upgraded sub-engine, as Invoked is no longer enough with the expansion of Master Rule 5. I'll end up putting ABC at tier 3 because I do believe it does the most out of these decks. But for Winda, you can almost argue it's not right now. I do think that the deck is still decent enough to be rogue. It's also got Lithocism back at 3, giving them variance, as well as Destrudo and Ancient Fairy Dragon, giving them easier access into Diagram. These actors got significant upgrades, and we've seen some results, but the deck still has its own set of problems. Cloggy hands, effects that lock into Abyss actors, and many choke points while being susceptible to certain breakers is enough for me to leave it near the bottom of the rogue tier. Here Runic is another deck that's seen an uptick in play as you compare your for hire disruptions with Runic stuff, and I think the strategy is decent enough to land itself in the rogue tier, but I wouldn't go beyond that. Dagger is also kind of nice as you can use its Diamond Dire effect in order to free up your extra monster zone. In Ultimate deck, we have Evil Eye, and while the support it got in Photon Hypernova was amazing, being enough is just a testament to how underwhelming its previous cards were. I think that the situation, similar to Photon, where it's so close but so far, have to put this as not right now, and maybe even hope for more support. For the final deck, and we have Mayakashi with its Link 3 and the new trap that can lock your opponent out of summoning monsters from their hand deck or extra deck. Unfortunately, this deck is still very susceptible to hand traps, and it's not quite as consistent where we're at with decks in 2023. Also, I want to put it at Rogue for its blowout potential. I'm left wondering if it's better off for right now. Put it as not right now, but with an asterisk. Anyways, if you all made it this far into the video, I thank you all so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.